What's up, everybody, and welcome to PPR podcast number 122, the Week 5 recap and Week 6 preview show. I'm Chase Izidoro, and the man in the box to the next to me is Bowe Fertig. Bowe doing it from remote today.
Yeah, we had to adjust on the fly, Chase, just like any part during the season. When things don't go the way you expect, you must adapt in the moment, and that's what we're doing here today.
Perfect. Train keeps it rolling. So we have to start off with, this was the week for the upsets, and there was no greater upset than Bishops getting their first win going to the Valley to take down Mount Miguel 24-13 and hand Mount Miguel their first loss. Did you even see this coming at all? Because I certainly didn't. The way Bishops has played so far this season, I didn't think that they would be the ones to hand Mount Miguel their first loss.
No, especially the fact that it was the first win for the Knights as well. Nobody saw this coming, not even the Matadors themselves. But Chase, the words lessons learned begins with an L, and sometimes that's what it takes to get back on the mental track. There's no doubt Mount Miguel is one of the most physically gifted teams in the Division IV that we've seen in a long time, maybe ever. But mentally, it can be just as difficult to deal with success as it is defeat. And the Matadors' average margin of victory before this game was 40 points. So the psychology, right, of thinking nobody can beat us, nobody can stop us, is almost more detrimental than going on a losing streak and knowing you need to continue to work week in and week out to get back in the win column. But with that being said, I'd rather take an L now before league play, before playoffs. The Matadors are still the front runner in Division IV and get a group of guys back this week that they get from the transfer portal and some injuries. There's no doubt the Matadors have an X on their back. They're going to get every team's best game, and big props to Bishops, right? Like, let's not take anything away from them. First win of the season. Matadors have been demolishing the competition, but the Knights had a great game plan. Matadors scored no less than 40 points all season. They held them to 13. So for the Knights, this is a type of win that propels a program, and perfect timing heading into Coastal League play.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to is, you know, you have to face adversity at some point in the season. So where do you want that to happen? I'm not saying Mount Miguel is like, all right, we need to, lose this one to teach ourselves a lesson. Obviously, that's not the way they work.
Right.
But if you were to lose one, it's the one that's before league play, and it's the one that will humble you to a team that hasn't won yet this season, to a team that has struggled so far this season. They come to your house and hand you a loss. If there's anyone that's going to humble you and like, all right, we reset, we go again, it's going to be this one. And I think if you're that coaching staff, that's what you have to be telling your players is you'd rather this be right now than in league play or in the playoffs, because the worst thing that could happen is they run the table, they get to the playoffs, they get to a spot where they have adversity and they don't know how to handle it because they haven't been in that situation before. So now's the time to, grow from this loss and keep going again.
Yeah, I agree.
But that wasn't the only upset of the night. There was another big upset. Santana beating El Cap 21-14 in overtime. Trent Taylor, 2 huge touchdowns in the game, and obviously he was very excited, as we saw in the post-game interview, as you could hear right now.
Oh, we're gonna ride high for sure. West Hills, they ain't ready. We're coming for them. Mayor's Cup staying here. Playoffs, Mount Miguel, hey, we're coming for you too.
I mean, those are pretty big words. I think all the best teams play with a little bit of arrogance, Bowe. It's a good thing to have, for such a dirty word. You need to have that. You need to have that chip on your shoulder of, you know what, we are the best and we're going to prove it to everybody. So I have no problem with him calling out Mount Miguel, we're coming for you, and West Hills, your rival. Do that. We like to promote friendliness. We like to have this great, great football community here in San Diego where we're all a family and we're all respectable. But at the same time, I want people calling out who they want to call out, because you're setting the standard that we want to beat these teams as they want to against West Hills. That said, Santana's going to have some very tough opponents coming up. They're 4-1 right now, off to a great start for the Sultans, but they have a bye. They'll play Granite Hills, Steel Canyon, who's been flying of recently, then Helix, Grossmont, and West Hills. So it's going to get much tougher for the Sultans coming down the line.
Yeah, it's the classic saying of put your money where your mouth is, Chase, and Trent Taylor is going to have to back up his words. It's one of those things where, hey, there was a point in my senior year where we went on television, and we said we were going to blow a team out. Our coaches sat us down. We're like, listen, you put your foot in your mouth. Now you must take it out yourself and live up to the hype. And we did, thankfully. And I'm sure the coaching staff is still thinking the same thing, especially when you have that strength of schedule. It's the toughest strength of schedule for any Division IV team on the docket. So, and it's interesting because he's almost overlooking those teams because they play West Hills at the end, and they don't even play Mount Miguel this season unless they play him in the playoffs. So it was a bit interesting, but I love the confidence. And Trent Taylor is their guy, right?
Yeah, he is.
He had 2 touchdowns, including the game winner. He's their special teams guy. He's also solid on defense. And this was a great defensive game on both sides. And the Sultans defense won it in the end. Santana provided a lot of pressure. Isaiah Lloyd was getting in all game. And on the offensive side, they were running a 2-quarterback system. I can see them sticking with sophomore quarterback Jaden Goldman. He's only in his 2nd year of playing competitive football, so he has a big learning curve. But he's a quarterback that stands tall in the pocket with a nice touch. Kind of reminds me of a young Trevor Appleman, the Mater Dei quarterback now at New Mexico State. He can make all the throws, but this is definitely Trent Taylor's team. El Cap also we know about. Brent Taylor and Chance LaChapa, still one of the better duos in the county. But JT Taylor on the defensive side had a pair of picks, 1 returning for a score in the first quarter. Unfortunately, El Cap fell just short, but now they're on a 2-game losing streak, so it'll be interesting to see how they respond.
Yeah, 2-game losing streak for El Cap. They need to bounce back now. They will be the East County game of the week again this week as they take on West Hills. But I do love that calling the shot because, like you said, they play West Hills. They don't play Mount Miguel as of yet. So they're calling the shot saying, hey, we know Mount Miguel is going to be this top team in D4. We're going to be there with them when it comes down to it, whether we meet them in the final or some point along the road. We're coming for you guys. Let's see if they get there first, obviously, but I love that from Santana, and I love that from that program. They want it all. Go get it, guys. I'm all for it. Now we talk about some D4 teams, though, since we're talking about Santana and Mount Miguel. Both those teams are 4-1. Chula Vista's 4-1, with their only loss coming to Mount Miguel. Crawford 3-1. Even after losing all those players last year, they're still off to a great start. Westview 3-2. We've seen how great they've been. Bonita Vista at 4-1. We've seen what Caden Ada Tannehill can do carrying that team. And then even Calexico at 4-1. I'll go on the record saying I think Mount Miguel still is above all of them. I know they have this hiccup right now against Bishops, but at the end of the day, once they start getting those players back from transfers, they're going to be the top dog to beat in D4. Who do you see as being able to put up the fight against them?
Well, I want to say Chula Vista up front, but we saw the beating they took against Mater Dei that first time. You know, at this point, it's Mount Miguel and who's going to play them in the championship game. So Chula Vista, you know, that junior connection of Isaac Baca and Nathan Gillespie have lived up to preseason hype, right? Through 5 games, Baca has thrown for 831 yards. He's rushed for 157, racking up a dozen touchdowns, 9 passing, 3 rushing. And the biggest beneficiary of that has been Gillespie, 22 receptions for 445 yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. That's top 10 in the county. All those marks are. And Chula Vista is returning the Metro Pacific Defensive Player of the Year, Frankie Almeida, who had a big couple plays against Olympian. He's making a case for back-to-back Player of the Year awards. His 6 sacks lead the Metro Pacific. But the X factor for Chula Vista, Ladarian Perkins. This 2-way player has helped the offense in the backfield, give them a nice 1-2 punch with senior Paul Alvarez. And he's averaging 23 yards per grab, but he's also the leader on the defensive side. So I see Chula Vista, you know, looking at their schedule moving forward, there can easily be 9-1, if not 8-2. And then you have Santana. They had that statement win over El Cap, where we talked about that, the strength of schedule, Granite, Steel, and Helix. Nobody has a tougher schedule in D4. Crawford gets a home game against Scripps, who's also a very good team. Then Mission Bay and Hoover to finish the season for City League rights. Matt Marquez has done a tremendous job with this program, taking them to a D5 championship game last season after decades missing out on it, and then starting 4-1, losing 22 seniors and 3 legitimate transfers that can be star players on this team this year. The one guy that stayed back, Joseph Mancello, leads the defense with 48 tackles, 400 rushing yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns on the offensive side. And you also talk about Bonita, right? It's their running game that gets them going. They're huge up front. They average 275. Homecoming king Kelly Brown is 300 pounds plus. Aiden Tannehill averages 130 yards on the ground, leads the Division 4 with 637 rushing yards. So this Bonita team is talented on the defensive side also. Diego Bustamante, who I saw in the South Bay Game of the Week, leads the team with 8 sacks, and he was a force in the backfield. We also have Nathan Sandoval, leads with 44 tackles. Calexico is another team, right? They're a running attack as well. They have 5 backs with double-digit carries. Luis Alcala leads the rushing attack with 261 rushing yards. So we talk about a lot of these Division 4 teams leading with the rushing attack. It's still Mount Miguel because they have the rushing attack and the passing attack. And that's where I see Chula Vista separate themselves as well. I see them really balanced on the offensive end.
You know, when we talk about Mount Miguel, so much of it's the passing attack, but I just want to take a quick second. Davion McGowan has been flying under the radar. People need to recognize that kid's name. He is such a big impact for that team, and it opens up so much more for Matthew Barton and Jeremiah Castillo, who had another huge long touchdown, and so did Delonte Williams. But McGowan probably doesn't get enough love that he should. That kid's a baller. It's so hard, though, because I go back and forth, right? I'm like, all right, I agree. Chula Vista's probably putting up the best fight. But when we saw that fight, it wasn't really much of a fight. Who knows? Maybe they get him back next time. But it's such a difference when it comes to Mount Miguel's speed. So then I look at like, okay, maybe it's Santana. They have their chance. But Santana lost to Fallbrook, a team that normally runs the ball a lot. Could Chula Vista be a problem for them? Could even then Bonita Vista be a problem for them? Because then Ada Tannehill. For me, it's probably going to be Westview, honestly. I think they have a very good passing attack with Mason Walsh. I'm still putting Mount Miguel above everyone else right now for D4, but I think the best team to give him a shot would be Westview, in my opinion. Also, really quickly, I went to that pizza place for our Dine and Dash for Carlsbad, which is awesome, and the pizza cannot escape me now. Brandon Stone, this is not from that pizza place, but just handed me a nice little slice here. Even off the clock on Friday nights, I'm still getting pizza.
Oh, yeah. The one time he brings in pizza, I'm not there. Yeah, thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, see how it goes? But now let's move on to another upset. One that, you know, this team has been flying high for the Nighthawks, but I think we've been high on Poway coming in. And after Poway's overtime win against Ramona, we expected them to win, but Del Norte, 28-20 over Poway. The Nighthawks scored a 4-1 on the season after an overtime loss. After an overtime game, win or lose, you have to come out hot because you're going to be a little bit slower, you're going to be a little bit more tired, still trying to get over that win or loss. And Del Norte got after them immediately in this game. Christian Guzman taking it to the house. And then on defense, Poway didn't get to Del Norte's side of the 50 until the second quarter. And that came off a botched snap on a punt. So that was the only time they got into the red zone was when the punt just put them there. And then there was a huge play by, one second. There was also
That's
a huge.
What happens when you eat pizza while you're talking?
I know. There we go.
Sure
There was also a touchdown pass from Ty Hurst to Tyler Alsop. That was a huge touchdown pass for them. That obviously went through Del Norte's side of the field, but they weren't operating on that side because of Del Norte's defense, and that's what got them out to that 21-0 lead early, and they were able to hold on from there, even though Poway did end up coming back late. Del Norte, we can't say enough about all these coaches who are off to great starts at their new programs, whether it be Rancho Bernardo or Oceanside and now the Nighthawks. What Barnett has done there has been pretty incredible at what they're trying to build.
Yeah, and it's really, to me, it's the big playability of this Del Norte Nighthawk team, right? Team captain Jack Snyder, he's completing 70% of his passes for 862 yards, 7 touchdowns on the season. But the big plays from running back Christopher Guzman and wide receiver Ty Olson, to me, broke that game wide open. Poway is physical in the trenches. We know that. Ty Hurst is coming into his own as a junior, but they're missing that big playability, and I think that's where the edge went to the Nighthawks. And one player that is coming up through the Nighthawks program is freshman Anthony Matar. I saw him at ESAC in the South Bay Game of the Week. He's a hard running back that can break through tackles and has some speed as well. This is a guy that's going to get more confident as the season goes along and is going to help out this offense become more balanced.
And normally we don't get this deep into the podcast before talking about game of the week, but just with all those upsets, they had to be introduced first. But now we get to the game of the week that really lived up to its billing. Helix defeating Cathedral Catholic at Cathedral 35-21, a very close game until that fourth quarter when really Helix's defense is what came alive. And the pressure putting on Jack Stevens, who's very good at using his legs, but that was the difference towards, getting the short fourth down where the Cathedral decided to go for it and flip the field position, and then Kevin Allen ran in for a touchdown, and then constantly having to punt back where Kevin Allen would run it back down again. That was the big difference, and I can't say enough about Kevin Allen III. 32 carries, 212 yards, and 3 touchdowns against a Cathedral Catholic Dons defense. That is phenomenal and one of the best performances that he will have in his high school career. He might go on to put up better numbers. That will still go down as one of the best performances to do that against any Dons defense.
Yeah. To me, this is the game Kevin Allen cemented himself as a Silver Pigskin finalist.
Without question.
He was taking big hits all game. Cathedral was bringing the lumber. They were hitting him through the first quarter to the fourth quarter. But Allen, the one thing that impressed me, and I know it impressed you, he got stronger, right, as the game went on. The explosiveness reminds me a bit of Christian Washington. When you give him space, he's gone. The Dons were up at the end of third quarter. So there's something to say for that, but along with Allen, that Helix team just seemed to get a little bit stronger. And dual threat quarterback, Rylan Jesse, right? Kevin Allen talked about that in the post game.
You could probably ask Rylan, would he consider himself dual threat? Would he consider himself running better, like his running better than his passing? You could definitely ask him that. Because this year in practice, man, he's been talking about that over and over. Like, hey, man, I'm Lamar Jackson back there. So we got.
He's using his legs more. He's opening up that offense that way. This is the most complete offense I've seen from the Scotties in a while. Even when they won the D1 championship 2 years ago, they relied heavily on Christian Washington. They do rely on Allen when it's needed, but I love this receiving core for Helix too, right? We talk about the big playability of Jackson Daniels, but one guy that stood out to me when watching the Raw was sophomore wide receiver Brandon Arrington.
Yeah, he's fast, man.
This guy was yakking all night. Yards after catch on short digs and hitch routes, taking it 20, 30 yards after the catch. He's one of the best sophomores at wide receiver, standing 6'2" with speed. And the Highlanders also have another sophomore receiver that we don't talk a lot about, in Jake Williams, a great complementary wide receiver to both Daniels and Arrington. But Cathedral, right? They competed in the trenches, but they lost it just due to the athleticism of Helix. Charlie Apps had another big receiving touchdown at the end of the first half. Right now, they currently stand to have the worst record in Division I at 1-4. But doesn't this eerily remind you of a team last year in Mater Dei starting 1-4 and then due to a tough pre-league schedule and then running through the gauntlet of tough San Diego teams and coming out on top as a D1 champion and winning the state? I don't know if they'll win state, but to me, they're still my favorite in Division I right now because both offensively and defensively, they're good and they still have a balanced attack on offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite in Division I outside of the teams that are probably heading to the Open, just to clarify on that. I agree with the Dons. It's a little bit different than what we saw from Madison, where Helix kind of opened it up in the second half, which Madison was competing. They were right there with them at halftime, but then it was kind of an utter dominance thing later. Cathedral was in it until that fourth quarter, where the pressure on the front seven from Helix against that offensive line of Cathedral and getting at Jack Stevens and forcing the pocket to collapse on him, that was really what made the difference, breaking up all those plays. And we've seen that time and time again now from Helix. We saw it obviously against Madison. Now we see it against Cathedral. The halftime adjustments by DeMaja Jones and his coaching staff have paid off for now they are an undefeated team. I can't say enough about them, how well they've been doing well, especially when you look at Rylan Jesse. I didn't know he could move like that. After watching the Raw, he's got some wheels, man. He could burst out for some runs. I love that Kevin Allen was trying to call him Lamar. But I don't know if they're up there yet when it comes to Lincoln and Carlsbad, but I think they're edging closer every day that passes. We see a much more complete team with weapons on the outside like Jackson Daniels and Arrington, and with a run game that you can lean on to open up the passing game with Kevin Allen, and they have speed on the defensive side of the ball as well. Helix is making a case to where it's going to be a 3-team conversation for who's the best in this county instead of the 2-team conversation we've had for so long. And I guess since we're on that topic right now, might as well just get into it with our top 9. For our top 9, I have a struggling obsession with who's number 1 in the county because I flip back and forth by the hour. Is it Carlsbad? Is it Lincoln? Do I reward a great win over Cajon, which was a dominant win over a great Cajon team, or do I not move Carlsbad because they didn't do anything to lose it? Because of that, I still have Carlsbad 1, Lincoln 2. It's 1A, 1B still for me. I can't find flaws. I can't find anything wrong with these teams. And honestly, I'm at the point where because I started with Carlsbad, I'm not moving them until otherwise. That's just where I'm at. If I started with Lincoln, they'd be 1. That's just how I feel about both these teams. I can't separate them until I see them play each other, honestly. And maybe we get to that point, maybe we don't, because we are seeing some other teams step up now. But I still have a feeling that these 2 teams will be there at the end of the day. Josh Ball and Mason Walsh balled out again for Carlsbad. They were phenomenal, making it easy for Julian Sayin to just, give them the ball and then let their athleticism play against a very good Ramona team as well. Lincoln, I can't say enough about shutting out Cajon. Their defense proves to be the best in San Diego. I'm going to take back my words when I said that I thought Madison was coming out stronger than Lincoln. I regret those words. And nothing against Madison. I still think they have great players. But this Lincoln defense, we saw an all-time defense, in my opinion, last year. This Lincoln defense is making their own case in their own right this year. Jerome Roberts, if we want to talk about guys cementing themselves into Silver Pigskin candidacy, Jerome Roberts is doing that. He's leading this defense. There's a reason they gave him the number 2 after Roderick Robinson left. He had like 2 blocked punts that just changed the field on Cajon. That's just something that demoralizes a team on top of the fact that he's flying around like a ball hawk out there. He's been phenomenal for Lincoln. I can't say enough good things about him. 3, I have Helix at 5-0. At 4, I still have Granite Hills. Maxwell Turner, 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pablo Jackson, 121 yards and a touchdown. One of these guys is going to make the underclassmen of the year. My argument should be that both of them should make it, in my opinion. They are incredible, and they do so much to help their freshman quarterback, and it really comes down to the O-line. We'll get more into Granite Hills in a second. At 5, I do have the Dons at 1 and 4. It feels wrong because they have, only 1 win, and it was the opening win. It does feel wrong, but they are still so competitive, and it's like a mixture and blend for my top 9. It's not just what was your results, it's who do I think going up against people after I've watched them. So for me, I still think the Dons are the 5th best team in this county. I have El Camino at 6. They're 3-1 now. Massive win against Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel offense that we know can put up a lot of points. 69-6. Carson Howard, 200 yards, 4 touchdowns in 2 quarters of play. A well-rounded team, massive in the trenches, and I think a team that's going to give a lot of people problems once Avocado play kicks off. They have potential to be the D1 champions this year. I'm not certain if they'll get to the Open. They might, depending on how their Avocado League goes, but I think El Camino is flying under the radar to so many teams. At 7, I have La Costa Canyon. I was kind of struggling on who should I put higher, La Costa or El Camino, but I think La Costa Canyon just continues to put on more and more performances. We've seen Quinn Roth, we've seen Trevor Ladd be great in the pass game, but the running backs were on display. Andrew Mays, great on the ground, but sophomore Kobe Herman was phenomenal, taking the little dump pass and then breaking off 7 tacklers to go to the house. Was a phenomenal touchdown. It's going to be up for play of the week this week. At 8, I have Mission Hills. They won the Discovery Bowl 35-7. San Marcos, obviously, without Creep Macchielli, he told me he'll be out for at least 6 weeks. He'll be back probably week 10 or week 11. He will be back for the playoffs, which is always great to hear. But San Marcos didn't really know what to do. They went for a backup quarterback. They went for the Wildcat option with Jace Nix, which Jace Nix did admirably. But they were still in that game. It was 7-0 at halftime. Granted, it was raining. But then they tied it up, made it 7-7, and then Mission Hills took off. The defense of Mission Hills is really what I want to talk about. Jonathan Class has been exceptional. He had a tip pass that he had an interception for, but Jacob Emoto was phenomenal as well. He got a pick 6 that he took to the house, plus a bunch of pass breakups in that game. Mission Hills' defense is really going to let Troy Hune, grow into himself and, get more comfortable in the offense. And he looked better too. I think he looked far better than what he was in that first week against Granite Hills. And Mission Hills could be a team that rises up this rankings a lot more. I had them higher last week. I believe I had them at 6. The only reason they're falling is because just the exceptional performances that LCC and El Camino put out there. That's the only reason. I'm still high on Mission Hills. And then 9 is Madison. It feels honestly gross to have this Madison Warhawk team at 9 because they are so much better than that. And I feel like they're only dropping because they were on a bye, which is unfortunate for them, coming off 2 bad losses that really they were competitive in. The Helix one kind of got away from them, but they were right in it in the Honor Bowl. Huge matchup for them this week. We'll get into that. But, Bo, what about your top 9?
I would say the top 4, and I'm going to put Lincoln at the top right now. They won Division I last year. I get Carlsbad. They have the best quarterback in the nation. Good offense matched with a great defense. But Lincoln shutting out Cajon was impressive. As far as impressive wins, that win was more impressive than any win Carlsbad has put together.
I think there's a very good argument for that.
1A, 1B, still 1A, 1B, but I'm going to give Lincoln the edge here this week. Helix has cemented themselves as a 3rd seed, to me, no doubt about it. And then Granite Hills, still the 4th seed. They're undefeated, won state last year. This is the first time in many, many years that I can remember. To me, these 4 open teams, top 4, right? The top 4 teams in Division I are considered open teams. These are locks right now. I don't see Mission Hills. I don't see Cathedral, LCC. I don't see Saints. I don't see Madison. Although some of those teams will have chances later in the season when league play begins. I don't see any of those teams beating Granite or Helix, let alone Lincoln or Carlsbad. So to me, open division teams are set. So it's 5 through 9 right now. And on Max Preps, they have Mission Hills at 5, LCC at 6, Saints at 7, Cathedral at 8, and Madison at 9. And I'm okay with that right now. I do bump CC Cathedral Catholic up just because of their strength of schedule. And I have LCC right behind them, Mission Hills, Madison, Saints. But that's the great thing about the Western League play. We're going to see a lot of those teams face off against each other. But top 4 set for me, 5 through 9. I have Cathedral, LCC, Mission Hills, Saints, Madison.
Yeah, I have Saints just on the outside looking in. I think they've been phenomenal. But, with this top 9, I think I have to put El Camino in there. I'm big on the Wildcats.
I'm good with that.
And we're going to talk more about them coming up. The one thing when we talk about those open teams, I do kind of agree. Obviously, Granite and Helix will have to play against each other. And with Granite's schedule, it almost looks like they will have to run the table for them to get into the open division. It's possible for them to do it, and it would be huge if they get the win against Helix. And who knows, maybe if Helix loses, they still might get in. It's going to be difficult for maybe both those teams to get in. Maybe we see a situation where another Avocado team slips in. I could see it being Mission Hills or El Camino, or maybe Cathedral has a great Western League and puts up great wins against great teams. So there is possibility for more movement to come with that open division just on the scheduling basis. But I think I agree when I say the 4 teams right now that we both have are, in our opinions, just a step above the rest a little bit, with maybe the 1 and 2 being the top still. Let's get into week 6, and why not start off with the game of the week, a huge game for both these teams. We talked about scheduling-wise for Granite Hills. We talked about the slow start for Madison. Now they match up against each other. 2-3 Madison at 4-0 Granite Hills. This Madison offense against the Granite Hills defense is what's going to decide the game, because we know about Granite Hills defense. They fly around to the ball, arguably one of the best defenses in the county next to Lincoln. Can Madison get it going? They have all the weapons. They have Jalen Brown. They have Tival. Can Riley Parentel go up against this Granite defense and just not make mistakes and just play great football that drives the ball downfield and gets points on the board? If they can put points up, 3s and 6s and 7s, they could do that every single time. They have a shot of beating Granite Hills. The problem is Granite Hills' defense is phenomenal, and they can cause havoc and cause turnovers. And if you give up the ball too many times against Granite Hills, going to be a wrap because Maxwell Turner and Pablo Jackson are going to run down that field behind that offensive line.
Yeah, Madison's defense and special teams are going to need to play big this week. If I'm Madison, I'm stacking the box and making the freshman quarterback Benitez beat me.
Absolutely.
Right? He is completing 66% of his passes, which is a great completion percentage for a freshman. But we've noticed a lot of balls, 5 yards downfield, maybe 10 yards downfield. Not a lot of long balls out of this offense, mainly because they've been working ahead. And they have Pablo Jackson and Maxwell Turner combining for 150 yards on the ground, which definitely helps. Both defenses are going to be flying around. There's no need for on-the-field mics. You're going to hear the plastic colliding in the stands, and it's going to be a great defensive matchup. But if Madison is going to come out with this win, the defense and special teams are going to have to, if not put up points on the scoreboard, they're going to have to put the offense in great positions to score.
Yeah, Granite Hills has done a very good job at making it very easy for Benitez. Great offensive line, 2 great running backs, even putting Pablo in the slot so that you can use him on the short routes and just keeping everything short and simple for him. I do believe he can stretch the ball downfield, but he doesn't need to when he has this offense. So for Madison, it's going to come down to their front 7. They need to punch them in the mouth right at the offensive line, because if that offensive line gets to that second and third level and allows Turner and Pablo to get going, it's a wrap. And I still think Madison is very competitive, still very high on the Warhawks. But this Granite Hills team, they have the scheme that's set to win games, and they know what they're doing. They know exactly how to go down and win it. If you can't disrupt that, it's not going to go well for you guys.
Yeah, Madison's coming off that bye week. Coach Jackson has had 2 weeks to prepare, so that's a big deal for that Warhawk squad.
And now we talk about the game you will be at, the National City Mile Car South Bay Game of the Week. 3-2 St. Augustine at 1-3 Mater Dei Catholic. I have Saints on my outside looking in when it comes to my top 9. This team has been phenomenal. Great win over Newport. Bronx Latuli Gasanola blocking the game-winning field goal attempt to get the win. It's little by little they get these wins. Close games, they almost upset Granite Hills. Brady Palmer's health has been kind of the key thing as if Saints is going to be a huge threat. He needs to be out there, even though we saw them perform admirably against Granite Hills without him. Parker Johnson has started to take a bigger role in this offense. He had 146 total yards and 2 huge touchdowns against Newport. But for Mater Dei Catholic, they seem, I don't know if desperate's the right word, but it needs to happen now. We've seen them schedule a very tough schedule, but they have been blown out in all those games. They got blown out by the Dons, they got blown out by the Lancers, they got blown out by the Hornets. This is a huge team they're going against in St. Augustine, because St. Augustine's just on that cusp of being in the conversation for a top D1 team. And now you have Mater Dei, who was that top D1 team, needing this win to prove that they can beat these top teams in this county. It's going to be a lot of teams trying to prove themselves here on Friday night.
It would be a huge win for Mater Dei. And we can't forget, they started 0-4 last season and then ran the table, right? Different player personnel, different coaching staff, just a different situation at Mater Dei right now. Last year, they had all those returners coming back. This year, not so much. They're a much younger squad than they were last year. This is a classic Catholic school matchup, right? I love it. And watching that Newport game go on the Raw, that was an exciting game to watch. If out of all those games that I watched on Raws this past weekend, that was the most exciting. Newport could throw the rock around the field. And the one thing that stood out to me that I might have overlooked, the Saints might have one of the best rushing attacks in the county.
It's really good.
They have 5 players with 20 or more rushes. You mentioned Parker Johnson. He was the guy I was going to talk about that really has we knew him last year as a freshman, had a couple big plays in that Division I playoff game. But now inserting Fa'alave Johnson, the freshman, he's an impact player, big playability. You put the ball in his hands, he could take it to the house at any point in the game. Add that with Parker Patterson and Will Flores. Johnson, I guess we could say. Fa'alave Johnson and Parker Johnson, along with Flores, freshmen and sophomores, right? And then Brady Palmer, a sophomore quarterback. This team is young. The fact that we're actually even talking about them in our top 9, kudos to them. This is going to be a team next year and the following year that we're going to be talking about in the open division, but the defense as well. Vic Trollinger, Latuli Gasanoa continue to lead the defense as sophomores. right? We talk about underclassmen. This is a team that's going to be built for these next couple of years. But Mater Dei, they knew what they were getting themselves into this season. That even if they happen to drop this game, that will drop them to 1-4. But then they have Montgomery, Bonita Vista, Eastlake, and Otay Ranch at the Metro Mesa. They can win out, still get above 500, and win league, which is a big deal still for a Mater Dei program. So even though the Saints are the favorites in this one, it is at Mater Dei, and you talk about a statement win, that would be it for the Crusaders this week.
And that's what they need. And, obviously, no disrespect to those other teams, but I still have Mater Dei winning league. I still have them running through that league, and I still think they are a good team. But it comes down to the top teams, and they need to establish themselves here. And it really comes down to Anthony McMillan. You got to run it through this guy's hands. He is your best player on this team. Cartel Purvis and Buxton are a great combination, no doubt. But it's not McMillan, though. It's the offensive line. That offensive line, if they need to put it on themselves this week, because Saints has a great pressure. They have great young players, but those players get pressure. So this offensive line, you need to open the running lanes for McMillan. If you can do that and you put it on yourselves to go win this game, you will win this game. If that doesn't happen, if that O-line does not win in the trenches, I think St. Augustine walks away with the victory.
Yeah, I agree.
But now we get on to the Jersey Mike City game of the week, a very intriguing game as we have 4-0 Army-Navy at 4-1 La Jolla Country Day. Battle of two kids that could possibly be on the Silver Pigskin podium at the end of the season. Army-Navy led by Ratumana Bulubulavu, who through 3 games, they haven't updated the stats from Parker, but through 3 games had 11 sacks. It's probably more than that now after the game against Parker. They have not allowed a single point all season. We talked about how great they were defensively last year. 49-0 over Orange Glen, 40-0 over Gila Ridge from Yuma, Arizona, 49-0 over Temecula Prep, and 55-0 over Francis Parker. I think they give up points this week against La Jolla Country Day because on La Jolla Country Day side of the ball, you have Jaden Mangini. Not there in week 1, don't really know what was going on. He had a reception and a rush, so I don't know if it was an injury thing, but they weren't playing him at quarterback. But in his next 4 games, they won all 4. So the only one they lost was that one where he wasn't involved against Chula Vista. And then he put up, they're averaging 38 points per game, 611 passing yards, 70% completion, 7 touchdowns through the air, only 1 interception, 78 carries for 407 yards. That's 5.2 yards per carry, and 10 rushing touchdowns. So in total, in those 4 games, he's got over 1,000 yards and 17 total touchdowns. When you have the unstoppable force of Jaden Mangini meet the immovable object that is the Army-Navy Ratumana Bulubulavu-led defense, which one gives?
Well, we do know that Army-Navy had 9 shutouts last season as well, right? So this comes at no surprise. When you're just talking about one player on the offensive side going up against a complete defense, you have to give the edge to the defense. The winner of this game will be the heavy favorite to win the Coastal League. The Warriors are one of 7 undefeated teams remaining in the county. And not only the defense, but they're averaging nearly 50 points per game on the offensive side. We know about Bula, but Xavier Leatherman still continues to lead this defense at linebacker. Nehemiah Brunson Jr. is a guy who does it all. We talk about Mangini, but Nehemiah Brunson, he's averaging more than 50 yards on the ground and 50 yards receiving. He also has 5 scores on the season. Junior quarterback Carlos Ramirez has been efficient, completing 66% of his passes and a clean sheet, 5 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. And they have a young freshman at running back, leads the rushing attack with 207 rushing yards, averaging 13 yards per carry. That's Jacob Eastley. The Tories have started league play with 2 wins, which is nice, over Escondido Charter and the White Tigers. But once again, it was the Jaden Mangini show last week, completing. They put him at quarterback now. Like they're like, all right, we're done trying to move you around the offense. Let's just put you behind snap. He completed last week 12 of 17 of his passes for 138 yards and a touchdown, added rushing a score as well. But with Army's ability to put up points and having one guy to key in on, I would say Army-Navy is the heavy favorite in this one.
It's going to be interesting because we're going to talk about, which one gives and which one is going to be the one that, does Army-Navy give up points? Does La Jolla Country Day still have the same attack as they do? It's going to be interesting to see just who stands out the most. When I look at Army-Navy, Bowe is someone that I don't know if anyone on La Jolla Country Day's offensive line is ready for. And I just want to see a couple plays where he gets in and then Mangini has to do something with his legs. That's all I'm looking for in this spectacle because I want to see who shines the most because I'm big on Mangini. He can literally play everywhere. When I interviewed him, he said he could play quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, linebacker, offensive line if they asked. He's phenomenal. And honestly, when you watch him, you think, oh yeah, him going to Navy sounds like the perfect place for him. He looks like the prototypical Navy quarterback. I think Army-Navy, though, this is not just a chance for them to be on a game of the week, but it's a chance for them to showcase who they are, not just Bowe, but all those guys you mentioned. It's their time to be in the spotlight for a longer segment on the PPR to see more of their highlights. I think they will take this opportunity, and I think they're going to win this game. I really do. I think at the end of the day, maybe it's because of the defensive side of me and the bias coming out, but I think the defense plays, and when you're not giving up points to anybody, I think the trend will continue. I think Mangini gets in for a touchdown, and Matt and Craig also has been great for the Tories, but I think Army-Navy is on a mission this year to prove that they are a great program on the rise.
Kudos to Coach Brunson. The fact that we're talking about a 5 AA team possibly beating a Division III team, kudos to him in that program.
Absolutely. And now we get on to a rivalry game, one of the better rivalries in this county for the North County Game of the Week. 3-2 Oceanside at 3-1 El Camino. Huge for that community, always a big game. What can Oceanside do to take down El Camino, though? Because this El Camino team is massive in the trenches. It's got great players like Carson Howard, Devin Serta. I think it might be a little bit too difficult for Oceanside in this one, but we've seen what Pumeli has done this year. This Oceanside team has turned the corner, much like how Grossmont has. Within the first year, they look a lot better. Can they be competitive? I don't know. We saw what they did against Mission Hills. They weren't exactly in that fight. They came back and put 14 points in the fourth quarter to make the scoreline look a little bit better. But maybe it was a bit of a big step for them in their first year under this new regime. I think the similar thing will happen for El Camino, but who knows? It's a rivalry game. Maybe we get more out of these kids to where they can rise up to that level and give them a bit more of a challenge.
Oceanside now in the Valley League, starting 2-0 in league play. They can use that momentum. And they had convincing wins, right? Beating Westview 35-13 and Escondido Escondido Charter last week, 44-7. It's great to see them start league play 2-0. Can they carry that momentum against a really good El Camino team? You talked about Serta. You talked about Carson Howard. Those are the two seniors that are leading this squad. And those two guys, to me, seem to be head and shoulders above what Oceanside currently has right now, just because of their experience and strength on the offensive side. You have to give the edge to El Camino, who is now on a 3-game winning streak themselves after dropping their season opener to Mission Viejo, who's a really good team. They're 4-1 this season. So it was surprising to me to see El Camino put up 69 points against a solid Mount Carmel team. And they held Mount Carmel to 6 points. And the Sun Devils were averaging 30 per game. So after seeing a win like that, if Oceanside could just keep this game competitive, that would be a big one for me.
Absolutely. I think that's where it comes down to for Oceanside is be competitive. You might not beat El Camino because they're much further in their process of their program right now. But if you could keep it competitive and put on a good show for everyone that's going to come out and everyone that's going to come out for not just your team, but for El Camino as well, that will be, obviously it might end up in a loss, but at least there'll be somewhat of a moral victory in that sense. But who knows? We'll see from the Pirates and the Wildcats. That's going to do for us, though, for this edition of the podcast. As always, if you have questions to ask us, you want to hear it answered on the podcast, DM us. We are on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We check all of them. You can always hit us up. You say what you want. Maybe it gets read, maybe not. We have no problem with that. We want to hear from everyone in this San Diego high school football community. But stay tuned tomorrow for PPR podcast number 123, where Paul and Bert sit down with former PPR member and former member of the Red Jacket, now at San Diego Prep Insiders, Christian Peterson. But for us, that's going to do it.